So today we're talking about how to make homeschool more fun with a paper project. And I'm going to teach you how to reverse engineer a project with your kids so that number one, they're more engaged in what they're learning, they're excited about what they're doing, and at the end, they'll end up with something that they're proud of. So imagine that you've given them a buffet of different types of projects that they can create to show what they've learned by the time that they're done. Say for a second that you're going to be teaching them about Native Americans and it has different parts and pieces. So now you give your kids the option of here are some projects that you can choose from, and they choose a little foldable piece of paper that at the end will contain everything that they have learned about Native Americans on the inside. So by the end of this video, we will have gone through all of these steps. They'll choose, they'll plan, they'll learn, they'll draft, and they'll polish. But it's so important that you get their buy-in when you are presenting them with creative ideas. Inside of my little Patreon group, we actually we talk about different ways that you can do hands-on projects with your kids, which is great. But if your kids don't choose it, if they don't buy into it, then it may fall flat. So it's super important that they choose the product first. And I call it a product because they're gonna invest so much time into it that at the end, they're gonna be really proud of what they created. So the first thing is that they chose a product. Now, if you look at this foldable, I left it blank by intention. I was that little girl that if I saw the cover on a coloring book, I didn't give myself permission to color the pictures any differently on the inside. So I don't want to show you what this could be in this video. Instead, I'm going to show you how to use this type of a fold. So the first thing is that your kids choose a product. Now you let them go away. Okay. Or if they're older, you would include them in this process. They go play, they watch a video, they go to bed, they go visit grandma, whatever. You then take the time to map out, okay, this piece of paper with this creative fold has a number of different sections to it. It has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 different sections. That's 14 different pieces of information that as they're studying and learning about Native Americans, they get to record inside this piece of paper. Now, the beautiful thing is that some of them are bigger than others. So you want to mentally think through, okay, for this piece of information, I want them to have a bigger spot to work with. So you would take the time to take a piece of paper, a template, and you would draft out the different subjects that you would want to learn, okay, that you want the kids to learn. Then you would give them a draft template. Consider it scratch paper. They have their completed one. So you'll go through and you'll create the fold. This is like the final foldable, or maybe the almost final, because it's okay to have to polish it at the end. But you'd give them a template that's white that as they're learning today about the tribes of the Arctic, okay, or the tribes of the plateau, as they're learning about that this week, this is the space that they're working with. So you're going to read stories, you're going to watch videos, you're going to maybe do some arts and crafts, and maybe do some worksheets or some quiz type stuff. But then the kids get to decide how they record that information here. Maybe it's a word bank, maybe it's a picture with labels on it or a map, whatever they decide to do. Because at the end, they're going to have the ability to open this up and you're going to be surprised. They're going to be able to say, let me tell you about the tribes of the plains. It doesn't matter what it looks like. They're going to have information that they remember from this thing. So you're going to map it out and then you're going to chunk it out. How long are we going to stay in this topic? And then at the end of the week, maybe if we were going to be studying Native American tribes, I could imagine doing 8 weeks of study, one series of tribes at a time. And then for 3 or 5 days a week, we would dive into the different things that the different tribes had to offer that they want to teach us. And then a day or two we would use to actually record it onto our little foldable. This looks like a simple piece of paper. Okay. This is actually potentially a month's worth of studying, 3 months worth of studying, maybe even half a year or a full year of studying, because your kids are going to take what they're learning and they're going to condense it and put it into these spaces on there. When it's all said and done, they're going to have this nifty little foldable that you can have them attached to a piece of cardstock paper and create a cover and a back cover. On the front, they'll decorate it and they'll title it whatever the subject was that they studied. So in our example, the tribes of North America or tribes around the world, whatever you study. And then they can create some kind of cool fastener for it. They can be creative with that. And when grandma comes, or your husband comes, or your neighbor, or your best friend, they can say, let me show you what I did. Now it looks pretty simple, but the awe that comes when they open it and it pops like this, you'll always get that from whoever they're presenting it to. That, my friend, is addictive. Your kids will love it, which means the next time they do a project, they'll have that same, they'll be hungry to get that same kind of reaction with their next final project. So you choose, you plan, you learn, and you practice. This right here, even on a simple foldable, is when your kids are practicing the drafting and polishing and editing of the writing process. And you want to teach them that it's okay to have a rough draft, a second rough draft, and a polished draft at the end, or even many in between, depending on how old they are. You teach them that from the very beginning. Okay, so they should never cry if they have to rewrite it. If they know that they're writing a sloppy draft first, that's what this can be, a sloppy draft. And then there may be a half step before they get to that final draft, then they'll be ready when their pencil breaks or the ink blows up on the paper. It won't be such a disaster. This is super important in this kind of a project because it gives them, it's not as threatening when they're going through that whole drafting process. So super powerful. Inside of this type of a project, they're working within confined spaces. So they have to use creative thinking skills and project planning and mapping, and to be able to choose their words or images and to make them squeeze within a smaller space. Like look at this little triangle right here. To be able to fit what it is that they want to say in that little space takes incredible higher thinking. So don't just look at this and say, ooh, that's just a simple piece of paper. That's nothing. There's so much learning wrapped into a project like this, not to mention the fine motor development that comes from folding and the, what do you call it? Personal development that comes from folding something that could be a little bit challenging. So the very last step in a project of any size and shape is to polish. And then, especially when your kids are little, or as you're trying to get them hooked on falling in love with learning, they need to be able to present what they're learning to somebody that they can get that from. They only need to feel that a couple times in their life. And then it's like priming the pump for creative juices to flow so that the next time they dive a little deeper and they try a little harder to surprise their audience. Super powerful. So when you're looking to infuse homeschool with creativity and fun, don't neglect choosing what looks at first glance like a simple piece of paper with a fun fold. Don't overlook the power of putting what you're learning onto a project like this so that the kids at the end can experience that flood of adrenaline that comes when they've wowed their audience. Does that make sense? So my name is Becky with A Better Way to Homeschool. I hope that you like this kind of content. I would love to hear where you are in your homeschool journey, and I have some freebies for you down in the descriptions. So I hope that you grab them, and I'll see you next time.